We have to talk about the temple. You ask any Jew, when was the temple destroyed? And if you know your history, you'll say 586 BC was the first temple. The second temple was destroyed in 70 CE or AD. And you discovered the temple was destroyed in 410 BC, but not the temple in Jerusalem, the temple of Yahweh, of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh at Elephantine. What is a Jewish temple to the God of Israel doing at Elephantine? I would understand a synagogue, which is obviously somewhat of a later concept, but this is actually a temple where they brought sacrifices. Talk to us about that.
In Isaiah chapter 19, there are 5 passages, each of which begins, Bayom Hahu Yihyeh, and it talks about Mitzrayim.
So on that day, it will come to pass.
Right.
Okay.
And in verse 19, in other words, Isaiah 19:19, it says, Bayom Hahu Yihyeh Mizbeach Ladonai betoch Eretz Mitzrayim umatzeva etzel gevula Ladonai.
Wow.
So in that day, there will be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt and a pillar on its border to the Lord. So the temple of Chonio in Egypt, and Josephus talks about that, and he says that they cited this verse as the authorization. That's the warranty. Well, I hypothesize that this verse served the Jews who fled Egypt in the reign of Manasseh, that they could build a temple on the border of Egypt, and Elephantine was the border. So this would have been their warranty, but I say this is all my hypothesis.
So this is really big, because this is the part of Isaiah that even what I might call secular scholars accept comes from Isaiah. In other words, Isaiah 40 through 66 is referred to as Deutero-Isaiah. But this is the part that is pretty much accepted. Isaiah, the son of Amoz, spoke in Jerusalem around 700 BC. It's the first part of Isaiah. So this predates the temple at Elephantine.
Right.
And you're telling me there's a verse in Isaiah that talks about an altar on the border of Egypt, and these Jews who come to serve as soldiers in southern Egypt, they build themselves a temple, maybe because they heard Isaiah's prophecy or knew about it and said, oh, wait a minute, we're not supposed to build temples on every hill and under every leafy tree, like we do anyway. But Isaiah authorized this one, which is, now look, Isaiah here, I think in the context is talking about some future event. Although I guess it's still future, right? Meaning if you're at Elephantine, he spoke that 50 years earlier. I would understand this as an end times prophecy, but they could have read this and they said, oh, okay, we'll do it. We'll build an altar. Wow, that's incredible, on the border of Egypt. And then in verse 20, that shall come to pass as a sign and a testimony to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh of hosts in the land of Egypt, for they will cry out to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh before their oppressors, and he will send them great salvation, and he shall save them. And Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh will be known to Egypt, and Egypt will know Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh on that day. And they will, let's go on. Avdu zevach umincha, and they will serve with a slaughtering, meaning a sacrificial slaughtering, and a meal offering. V'nadru neder la Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh v'shilemu, and they will swear oaths to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, and they will pay it. This is incredible. Wow. So you're saying they that this is connected somehow, meaning they heard this and they're like, okay, we're allowed to build an altar in southern Egypt.
Yeah.
On the border. Wow. I want to look at the letter. That's incredible. I want to look at the letter and have you actually read it. So there's an incredible letter, and we actually have 2 copies of it. An incredible letter. In fact, I'll have you read it in Aramaic and I'll read your English translation. This incredible letter that was written, and let's back up. And we're going to get to this. I don't think we'll get to it this episode. It may be the next episode, the Passover Letter. The Passover Letter, what is the date of the Passover Letter? It's around 417 BC. Is that right? Something like that. In 410 BC, the temple is destroyed. And we know about its destruction from a letter written by the Jews of Elephantine to the Jews in Jerusalem, to the second temple, saying, look, we want to rebuild this temple. We need your help. And we have 2 copies of that letter. We have a first draft and a second draft. And then we have a memorandum with the answer. So can you read?
Well, you can see the letter goes on both sides of a papyrus, and so it can't be read at our session.
Yeah, we can't read the whole thing, but can you read us? I don't know, just read us the introduction, and then I'll read just real quickly.
The introduction, they address it to, the interesting thing is they address it to a guy whose name they usually call Bagowi, but it's an Egyptian name, and it's an Iranian, it's a Persian name, and the Iranologist would pronounce it Bagavaya.
Bagavaya, wow.
Bagavaya.
Well, so here's what's interesting. He's the governor of Judea.
He is the governor of Judea. So whether he is a Persian or whether he's a Jew that's got a Persian name is uncertain.
Wow.
So they write this letter to him, and it's written from Yedanya.
It starts, to our Lord Bagavaya or Bagavaya, governor of Judah, your servants Yedanya and his colleagues, the priests who are in Elephantine, the fortress. So let's just stop there for a second. The head man in Elephantine, his name is Yedanya, which is it ends in Yah, which is this typical ending you'd find of Yishayah, Eliyah, meaning it's the poetic form at the end, in my name, Nehemia, of God's name, of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh's name. And there's some, greetings
but
there.
But you see, no, not there's some greetings.
Okay.
You see, it's Shlam Maran Elah Shmaya Yishal Sagi B'chol Idan.
Oh, beautiful,
it's
beautiful.
It's not Elahaya, the gods.
It's the singular there.
Right.
Okay, and guys, listen to the last episode where we talked about sometimes they ask in the name of gods. Here it's the singular God. Wow. The welfare of our Lord may, the Lord meaning the governor, may the God of heaven seek after abundantly at all time. In favor, may he grant you before Darius the king, etc. Okay. Now your servant, and I love it, now your servant, in the Tanakh, we always have these letters with the flowery openings, and then it'll say, and even prayers, and then I'll say ve'ata, and now, and that's what they really want to say. Right. The rest is introduction, before this introduction. Right. Now your servant, Yedanya and his colleagues thus say, and I'll just read this quickly, in the month of Tammuz, year 14 of Darius the king, when our Samis had departed and gone to the king, the priests of Chnum, the god, and here it says Chnub, the god who are in Elephantine, the fortress, in agreement with Vridanga, who was chief priest here, saying, so basically the priests of Chnum, who is the rival temple to the temple of Yahweh and of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh and Elephantine, and this Vridanga is some Gentile. They say, the temple of Yahweh, the God which is in Elephantine, the fortress, let them remove from there. Afterwards, that Verdanga the wicked, a letter sent to Naphina, his son, who is troop commander in Sain, the fortress, or Aswan, saying, the temple which is in Elephantine, the fortress, let them demolish. So there's this group of Gentiles who say, we've got to destroy the temple at Elephantine. We have to demolish it.
Not Gentiles, Egyptians.
Okay. I mean, they're not Jews,
priests,
right?
No,
okay.
Egyptian priests.
Okay. So they're rivals of the Jewish priests, right? In other words, they're destroying the temple because essentially it's a competitor on some level, and they don't want this Jewish temple there. And essentially, this is maybe one of the first pogroms we know about in history, where there's this race riot against the Jews, and they end up destroying the temple. And he gives this whole introduction about how the temple is destroyed. Guys, it's an incredible story. I'm going to skip ahead because it's a long letter. And when this had been done to us, we with our wives and our children sackcloth were wearing and fasting and praying to Yahweh, the Lord of heaven, who let us gloat over that Verdanga the cur. They removed so something bad happened to Verdanga a couple years later, right?
Vidranga.
So Vidranga was punished maybe for this, and they're very happy about it. Moreover, before this, at that time, this evil was done to us, a letter we sent to our Lord and to Yehochanan, the high priest, and his colleagues, the priests who are in Jerusalem. So this isn't the first letter. There's an earlier letter that we don't have that they sent asking for help to rebuild this temple. And they're saying, look, you didn't respond to the first letter. We don't mean to nag, but we want to rebuild our temple in Elephantine. And this is from 407, so it's 3 years later. It's already the second letter. He says, who are in Jerusalem. And then he says, and to Ostanes, the brother of Anani, and the nobles of the Jews, a letter they did not send us, so you haven't responded. And then the really surprising thing to me, Professor, is they then mention they also sent a letter, it says, to the Samaritans, Moreover, all these things in a letter we sent in our name to Delaiah and Shelemiah, sons of Sanballat, governor of Samaria. And we know who Sanballat is. He's mentioned in the book of Nehemia, in the book of Nehemiah. So we have, they send a letter to the Jews, now a second letter saying, look, we want to rebuild our temple. Can you help us? This temple in Elephantine. And they also send it to the Samaritans.